My Low-Carb Life, Chapter 18. These are a few of my favorite things. Mostly through trial and error, I found certain foods that make up a large portion of my low-carb eating plan. These are what I call my go-to foods because I know they have fewer carbs and lots of nutritional value. And I thought it might be helpful if I discuss some of these here. Let's start with what I call the holy trinity of low-carb eating: meat, eggs, and cheese. Meat. The wonderful thing about eating meat on a low-carb diet is that most meats are either no-carb or very low-carb, but also have high protein and fat content. One other benefit is that you can have a wide variety of meats, which helps keep you from getting bored with eating just one type of protein. To be honest, though, I probably eat as much chicken as I do all the other meats combined. I love chicken, especially dark meat like thighs and drumsticks. To me, they are easier to cook and have more fat than white meat. When I eat beef, it takes many forms. I can have hamburger patties, meatballs, steak, or use ground beef in a skillet dish or casserole. Ground beef is especially very easy to cook and mixes well with vegetables and other foods to create some amazing dishes. If you're not a fan of red meat, you can do the same with ground chicken or ground turkey as well. I could eat turkey every day of the year. It never gets old for me. That's why Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays. Like chicken, turkey is very versatile. Whether it's a whole turkey, turkey breast, or ground turkey, it blends well with vegetables to make some tasty dishes. When it comes to pork, cuts of meat such as bacon or pork roast are generally low in carbs. However, when you get into ham, keep an eye on your carb count. Ham, for some reason, has a higher carb count than other parts of the pig. You can still eat ham because it has a low carb count, but just keep track of how much you are eating. And be sure to make note of the sodium content regardless of what kind of pork product you're fixing. For instance, sausages and hot dogs can be tricky. Sausages and most hot dogs contain fillers that will increase your carb count and your sodium intake, so keep an eye on them. However, I have found a hot dog that only has one net carb per wiener and contains no fillers or nitrates. They're pretty high in calories, but as long as you don't eat too many in one sitting, you should be in good shape. Eggs. I think eggs are one of nature's most perfect foods. The average egg has about 1/2 of a carb and about 75 calories. It is a good source of protein and fat, and they taste great and go with lots of other foods. I know eggs are typically eaten at breakfast. There's no reason you can't eat them at other meals. As a matter of fact, I almost always have 2 boiled eggs on my evening salad. And on the weekends, I almost always make myself a cheese omelet for lunch. You can add eggs to other dishes as well to give that skillet dish or casserole a little something extra. I mentioned earlier that I eat anywhere between 12 and 18 eggs per week, and my cholesterol is perfectly normal, so I wouldn't worry too much about eating eggs. But you might want to consult with your doctor if you're worried about your cholesterol getting too high. One side effect of eating eggs, especially if you start eating a lot of them at once, is that you might feel a little bloated or have increased gas. This typically goes away after your body gets used to your increased egg intake. Cheese. It seems there are hundreds of types of cheese on the market now. Most cheese is fairly low in carbs and has both a good amount of protein and fat. For instance, 2 slices of Swiss cheese have 1 carb, about 160 calories, 16 grams of protein, and 16 grams of fat. Like choosing various types of meat, try different flavors of cheese to help change things up. One note though, try to avoid processed cheese such as the individually wrapped cheese slices. They tend to have way more carbs than natural cheese products, not to mention additives and preservatives. Fish and seafood. I am not a huge fish fan. However, I have found that eating fish and seafood on a low-carb diet really adds some variety to your meal planning and taste buds. Also, Fish and seafood are very nutritious and high in vitamin B12, iodine, and omega-3 fatty acids. When I do eat fish, I usually have salmon or some other kind of white fish. I also love shrimp, which don't have many carbs at all. Most fish have 0 carbs, which make them a great addition to your meal plan. For an easy lunch, canned tuna is always a good option. Cauliflower. If you had to choose just one vegetable to eat on a low-carb diet, it should be cauliflower. But don't choose just one vegetable. Variety is a good idea. Before I started my low-carb plan, I rarely ate cauliflower. Occasionally, I would go to dinner at my in-laws' house, and they would have raw cauliflower and broccoli to munch on, but that was about it. Once I started to discover the benefits of cauliflower on a low-carb eating plan, it became a vital ingredient for many of my meals. For one thing, cauliflower has a mild taste and mixes very well with other foods. It can be used as a substitute for potatoes. Later in this book, I share a recipe for what I call faux-tato salad, made with cauliflower instead of potatoes. Cauliflower can also be used as a substitute for rice. Any recipe that calls for white rice will work with cauliflower rice. That's just cauliflower chopped into rice-sized pieces. You can do that yourself in a food processor, or you can buy bags of frozen cauliflower rice at the grocery store. I've used cauliflower in dozens of recipes, and it always works. And since cauliflower is a cruciferous vegetable, it is good for your heart health. The best thing about cauliflower for a low-carb diet is it only contains 2 net carbs per cup. So the next time you're looking for a versatile low-carb vegetable, look no further than cauliflower. Vegetables. Speaking of vegetables, there are many others besides cauliflower that you can add to your low-carb meal plan. Whether you add them to a casserole or skillet dish or eat them as a snack, vegetables provide the nutrition you need. Most contain loads of fiber, which helps your body feel fuller longer. Some vegetables to put on your list of foods to eat are lettuce, which only contains 1 net carb per cup and is high in a variety of vitamins. Cooked spinach contains only 3 net grams of carbs per cup and is good for your heart and your eyes. Green beans, which have a few more carbs than other vegetables, 6 net carbs per cup, contain antioxidants that help prevent cancer and are good for the brain. Zucchini is a great choice for adding to a casserole. 1 cup contains only 3 net grams of carbs. You can also spiralize zucchini and use it as a substitute for spaghetti. Mushrooms are extremely low in carbs, 1 net carb per cup. Studies have shown that people who suffer from inflammation can benefit from eating mushrooms. Also, they are a great salad topping. Cucumbers make a great snack and are pretty low in carbs, only 3 net carbs per cup. And tomatoes, which are technically a fruit, but we're not going to go there right now. 1 cup of cherry tomatoes contains only 4 net grams of carbs. Not only are they a good source of vitamins, but they are high in potassium, which helps protect you from high blood pressure and risk of stroke. Cabbage, which contains only 2 net grams of carbs in 1 cup and can be used as a substitute for rice in many dishes. It also has a lot of fiber as well as vitamins C and K. And spaghetti squash, which is one of my favorite vegetables on my low-carb eating plan. It's fairly easy to cook and it can be used in lots of dishes or even as a side dish. With only 5 to 6 net carbs per cup, it can easily fit into your plan. Other vegetables you can include in your low-carb diet plan include artichokes, eggplant, onion, celery, radishes, Brussels sprouts, kale, avocado, asparagus, broccoli, and bell peppers. Do your research and be sure to carefully measure the carbs in the vegetables you choose. They provide the nutrition you need and the feeling of being satisfied and full that you desire. Remember, most vegetables that grow above the ground are worth a look for your low-carb eating plan. Fruit. When I first started eating a low-carb diet, I stayed away from fruit. Most of the literature I found stated that almost all fruits were too high in carbs for a low-carb eating plan. However, after doing some research, I discovered there are a handful of fruits that, with careful planning, you can incorporate it into your diet. Most fruits contain naturally occurring sugar, which causes them to have a high carb count. But some fruits have lower net carbs because they contain a lot of water and fiber. Here are some fruits that you might want to add occasionally to your plate. Strawberries are probably the most popular fruit on a low-carb diet. 1/2 cup of sliced strawberries has about 5 net grams of carbs. They also satisfy a sweet craving very well. In addition to strawberries, other berries with a similar net carb count include raspberries and blackberries. Watermelon is a great choice for your low-carb diet because it contains lots of water. Even though it's low in fiber, it contains about 6 net grams of carbs per 1/2 cup. You probably shouldn't have watermelon all the time, but it makes for a great low-carb snack on a hot summer day. Peaches are also a great low-carb fruit as long as you don't overdo it. With about 8 net carbs per 1/2 cup, peaches, like strawberries, provide a great solution to a sweet craving. Be sure to use fresh, whole peaches and not canned peaches, which are full of sugar. Other fruits you may want to add to your low-carb eating plan include melons like cantaloupe and honeydew. Nuts and nut butter. Nuts can be a great salty snack, but you have to be careful about which nuts you choose and how many of them you eat. I have found that the most versatile nut to add to a low-carb dish is pecans. Because they are high in fiber, 1 ounce of pecans contains only 1 net gram of carbs. Pecans are a great topping for a salad, and I even add pecan pieces to some casseroles and skillet dishes to give them an added crunch. Macadamia nuts come to a close second to pecans. They contain only 2 net grams of carbs per ounce and have been shown to reduce your risk of heart disease, diabetes, and certain cancers. They are also an excellent source of healthy fats, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. Peanuts are also rich in antioxidants, though they have about 4 net grams of carbs per ounce. And peanuts are a great snack if you're on the go and you need something to satisfy a craving. Just make sure you measure and count the carbs. Other nuts you can add to a low-carb eating plan include almonds, Brazil nuts, walnuts, hazelnuts, and pine nuts. You may think that if nuts are great on a low-carb diet plan, then nut butters would be too. The answer to that is yes and no. In general, nut butters such as peanut butter and almond butter pack a lot of punch when it comes to nutrition. They also contain a fair amount of fat, which you need on a low-carb diet. We always keep a jar or 2 of peanut butter in the pantry. For me, it's a great go-to snack. A tablespoon of peanut butter contains only about 3 net carbs, and if I'm having a craving, that usually does the trick. There's not that much difference in the nutritional value of peanut butter and almond butter, but it comes down to personal preference. However, be sure to choose regular nut butter and not low-fat or reduced-fat nut butters. They generally have added sugar and could increase your net carb count. Bread. I love bread. There's nothing like a great sandwich or fresh toast or a hot roll. The problem with bread is that most kinds are full of carbs. However, I have noticed lately that several makers of sandwich bread have come out with lower carb products. You always have someone making a buck off the latest trend again. The best thing to do is check the nutrition label before purchasing these products and make sure you can fit the amount of carbs per serving into your meal plan. I've tried some of these low-carb breads, and they aren't bad, just not great. The taste for some is a little strange, and sometimes the texture is too dense because of the added fiber. Also, there are hundreds of recipes for making low-carb bread, Most of them use almond flour or coconut flour, which gives an odd taste to the bread. I haven't found any of them that I really like. My advice is to stay away from bread, at least in the beginning. Then do your research and find a bread product that you can easily and safely add to your low-carb diet. Now, with that being said, I did come across some low-carb sliced bread recently that I thought I would give a try. Lewis Bakery's Healthy Life Keto Bread. I had been eating another version of Healthy Life bread, which had about 6 net grams of carbs per slice. It was good, but with the sandwich filling like turkey and cheese, that added up to about 12 net carbs, which can be a little high. This new bread claims to have 9 carbs and 8 grams of fiber, so that works out to 1 net carb per slice. It also has only 30 calories per slice. When I found this bread, I decided to make a turkey and cheese sandwich to take with me for lunch. Let me just say that this bread was a breath of fresh air. It was light and fluffy and tasted really good. The fact that each slice contains 8 grams of fiber didn't make it too tough. So, of all the low-carb products I have purchased and tried, I think Lewis Bakery's Healthy Life Keto Bread ranks near the top. The only downside was that it was a little expensive, but it was worth it to find a good sandwich bread to add to my list of low-carb foods. Rice, pasta, and potatoes. Like bread, rice, pasta, and potatoes are something you should avoid if at all possible. They are full of carbs and can torpedo your plan pretty quickly. The solution for me was to find foods that I could use as a substitute. As I mentioned earlier, cauliflower rice is a great substitute for white rice. Spiralized zucchini can replace pasta in spaghetti and other dishes. Cauliflower is also a great substitute for potatoes. And there are other vegetables you can research and use for substitutions as well. Casseroles and skillet dishes. I make a lot of casseroles and skillet dishes. They are fairly easy to make, and I can combine lots of my favorite foods into one dish. You can find some of my favorites at the end of the book in the recipe section. A typical casserole or skillet dish will contain some sort of meat, vegetables, and cheese. You can't get much simpler than that. Also, I can make a casserole that will last me several days, so I don't have to cook every night. But beware, some of these low-carb casseroles are so good that you shouldn't be surprised if you have to tell the rest of the family, hands off, that's for me. But seriously, I've made low-carb casseroles and skillet dishes that my entire family has enjoyed. For the most part, they are healthier than the casseroles we grew up with and just as delicious. Alcohol. When I was growing up, we never had alcohol in our house. Apparently, my mother had an uncle with an alcohol problem, and she told my father that she never wanted alcohol in her house. What's more, I grew up in a fairly religious and conservative home. So with the exception of once when my dad snuck in some wine, I can't think of a time that we had any alcohol. So I grew up not being exposed to alcohol. Once I became an adult, I never thought much about it. When I was in college, I tried drinking, but never was a big fan. I'm not going to argue the benefits or problems related to alcohol use. I think that is a very personal decision that each person should make. But I will talk about how alcohol can or cannot fit into a low-carb eating plan. Let's start with beer. My dad was not a fan. Apparently, he didn't like the taste. He told me once, they can take that beer and pour it back into the horse for all I care. In spite of how you feel about the taste, most beer has lots of carbs. A friend told me once that beer was just liquid bread. But there are a few beers that are lower in carbs. So if you can't live without a cold one every once in a while, research the carb content of your beer before you consume it. Wine is fairly low in carbs as well, with usually 3 to 4 grams per serving. Just check the carb count. On the other hand, most distilled liquors, such as vodka, rum, gin, whiskey, and tequila, have 0 carbs. However, most of them contain about 100 calories per 1.5 ounces. And because there is no nutritional value to those ounces, these are called empty calories. Those empty calories can sure add up over the course of an evening or a week. The bottom line is, if you choose to drink alcohol on your low-carb diet, you can find a way to make it work. Just don't overdo it.